Okay, so some of the objectives of today, we're going to be going over just a brief background of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. For those of you unfamiliar with this line of funding, we're going to be giving you an overview of the requirements, scope, and the logistics of the RFP process. And then we're going to give you guidance on how to seek support during the application process. So everything that will be covered today in today's bidders conference, and for any additional materials you might have questions about or want to access, please go to the RFP website. We can link that in the chat as well. I'm sure if all of you have found this, thank you so much, Jason. It's so difficult to go to Chrome and go back to the chat. I can't even access my notes at this time. Anyways, thanks, Jason. All materials and what we'll be covering today will be included in on the website, ckingwdc.org/RFP20- brief timeline of the process for the WIOA Business Services RFP was released on March 15th. Today's the bidders conference. The letter of intent, which is mandatory, will be due Monday, April 5th. The last day that we're going to ask you to submit any questions, and then we'll close the line of questioning, will be Monday, April 12th. All proposal packages are due Monday, April 19th. And then if the rating team, which we'll go over later, if they do request interviews from bidders, we will have interviews, oral interviews from those potential bidders the week of May 10th. The contract start date is supposed to start on July 1st of 2021 this year. And one date that is not on here, but is in the packet, is the board vote. The rating team will provide a recommendation to the Workforce Development Council of Seattle-King County's full board, and that recommendation will go to the full board on May 20th for their vote and approval. So the first part of today's bidders conference, we're going to be going over some background and context, reviewing any of the information that you need in order to understand the scope of services that are being funded. And then we'll also go into the program design, scoring guidelines, budget narrative and budget form, and evaluation. So for part one of today's bidders conference, we've already been over all updates, documents, information, the recording of today's bidders conference. Any questions or answers will all be found at the WIOA Business Services RFP website. We are asking any questions that you have today to be directed to operations@ckingwdc.org. We do want this to be a fair and transparent process. And so we want anyone with any question that anyone might have for that to be answered kind of in the public eye. Please include RFP 20-02 in the subject of the email. And each set of questions that are asked each week should be posted the following Monday. So this is just an example. Last week's questions were posted this past Monday. If you go to the website, you can click on that link, and that will link you to all the questions that were asked last week, as well as the WDC's responses. So the total amount of funds available for 1 year of a WIOA business services contract, $666,010. These are maximum funding levels right now because the allocations that come from the Department of Labor that come to our state entity, the Employment Security Department, and then eventually are divvied out to each of the workforce development areas in Washington state, aren't given to us until the spring. So these funding levels are subject to change based on those funding allocations, which is always a good sign. Again, the contract will start in July of 2021 and go to June 30th of 2022. But based on performance, we have the opportunity to renew the contract for up to 4 years, which would mean that the contract could go until the year 2025. So here's who is eligible to apply for WIOA funds. Any government, business, nonprofit, educational institution, or faith-based organization is eligible to apply. And for this particular program, we are considering both sole organizational applicants as well as consortiums. We are asking that should you decide to submit a partnership or consortium model, that you ensure that the activities conducted in your program design, each agency will receive a portion of the funding that does help leverage the strengths of the partnership. We also want to make sure that any partnership that you're entering into, there's a formal MOU. I think we mentioned later that just because you enter into a formal MOU, as you're designing a program for the RFP, should you decide not to move forward with that partnership, the formal MOU doesn't kind of bind you to that one particular partnership. We'll go over that in a few minutes. But we do recognize that smaller community-based organizations may not have the capacity to manage WIOA funding alone, but they have very distinct expertise in various areas of different industries, different populations, specifically COVID-affected sectors or populations. And in these instances, we are encouraging bidders with WIOA contracting process or experience to consider partnering with these community-based organizations that provide access to businesses and specific sectors specifically affected by the global pandemic. So for sole organizations, the type of application and the funding related to that would mean that the applicant is both the lead organization and the fiscal agent. Sole organizations can apply for less than the maximum amount of funding that's outlined in the RFP. But if the type of application is a partnership or a consortium, we will ask that one organization identify as the fiscal agent. The fiscal agent and the lead agency do not need to be the same. That is entirely up to the partnership that you want to form. And again, I did mention that we are asking you to have a formal partnership or memorandum of understanding with each of your partner organizations by the time the RFP is turned into the WDC. The letter of intent to bid. The LOI is due on Monday, April 5th. And we want to make sure that planning for the rating committee, we know how many applications are coming in, and we want to make sure that this is a fair process for everyone. Please include all partner organizations in your LOI, and any organization that is a partner organization must also submit an LOI. So the work of the WDC and its partners is driven by local agreements as well as state and federal rules and regulations. So all interested parties preparing proposals in response to this RFP We request that you be familiar with and plan to follow the guidelines, rules, policies, and procedures identified in these documents, all of which you can find either attached or linked at the RFP website. Now we're going to briefly go over the program design. So all elements of the program design have been carefully considered after years of business services procurements and program designs and continuous quality improvements. We have relationships with other WIOA business services providers around the state, but also around the nation. So we have used what we have learned over the years, best practices from other partners, as well as what we've learned from the Regional Workforce Strategy Work Group. And we have also pulled in aspects of the WDC's Regional Strategic Plan, all of which we have used to guide each of these program design elements to ensure that this business services program coming up is both able to be executable with the provided funds, and it meets the current needs of the business community. So currently, all of our WIOA services are entered into a state database, which we refer to as Efforts to Outcomes, or ETO. Currently, business service providers are not required to enter information into efforts and outcomes. They can, but they are not mandated to. The WDC has purchased and manages a database called B2B, and that is the database in which we ask all business services providers to input their services. I think at any time during a program year, we can ask a business services provider to start putting data into ETO during the funded program year. That being said, we will, of course, as the WDC, provide any required heads up, technical assistance, and guidance in how to enter those services into ETO. So all bidders, we ask to please complete and submit a budget and cost proposal form, of which is both linked in the RFP as well as can be found on our WIOA Business Services RFP website. Separately, bidders must include a budget narrative. This is where bidders describe how WIOA funding will be integrated and braided with other financial as well as non-financial resources from your organization and partner organizations if you decide to apply as a consortium in order to achieve a maximum benefit to customers. If you are applying as a consortium partnership, we do ask that you clearly identify the financial and non-financial resources provided by each organization. And then all of the operating overhead as well as administrative costs will be reviewed by WDC fiscal staff and are subject to negotiation as part of any proposal evaluation. All right, some basic proposal instructions. So we're asking that only digital copies of your entire RFP packet be sent to the operations@seekingwdc.org by Monday, April 19th. We have the subject line, business services RFP 20-02 : final proposal _ please put the name of your organization, not literally name of organization. And then we do ask that you keep your proposal narrative, not including table of contents, any sort of organizational charts. Your budget and cost proposal form and narrative don't count towards this, but we ask that you keep your program design narrative limited to 6 pages. So this is how each proposal will be scored. The organizational background, capacity, and performance histories were 35 points. Your proposed program design worth 70 points. Your budget form and narrative will be worth 15 points for a total of 120. So to ensure that all applications go through a fair and equitable evaluation process, we wanted to make sure everyone knows that the raters are chosen from outside of the WDC staff. WDC staff are not raters, but we are available to provide context, answer any questions, provide administrative support to the rating team to help the raters understand the WIOA procurement process, and then to eventually bring the recommendation to the WDC full board for approval from the rating team. So once the proposal deadline has passed, all applications will be vetted for compliance. Applications must follow all the instructions outlined in the proposal requirements section, including attachments, formatting specifications, as well as submission times. Only applications that are determined compliant will be shown to and considered by the rating team. Applicants out of compliance, we will notify. The rating committee, again, in general, can consist of WDC board members, workforce professionals, and community members. And then you saw the standard scoring rubric that each committee member will use to score each application. Again, the final board meeting, or the board meeting where the final recommendation will be May 20th at 9 a.m. And then once approved, all applicants will be notified of the WDC board's decision. We also have an appeals process. So an appeal must be made in writing within 7 calendar days from the date of the notice of award decision that's issued to your organization. And then contracts start again, July 1st, 2021. So again, for any ongoing questions or information that you might have, please start with the website. We are endeavoring to make sure that this is a fair, open, and transparent process. So again, any questions that you have will be shared publicly after we have answered them every Monday. Just a reminder that the final is due to the WDC on April 19th at 4 p.m. So at the end of the presented part of the bidders conference, I wanted to open the floor to Jason or Beth. Do you have any additional context or comments that you wanted to add?
This is Beth Blanchard. I would like you to go back to the slide that includes the linked documents, and maybe just kind of walk people through what those documents are and things that they might not know just from the titles. Thank you. Mm-hmm. That one. And Jason and I can help.
The WDC's Regional Strategic Plan for Equitable Recovery was published in December of 2020, and it outlines a plethora of what we've kind of termed North Stars to help guide our investments and our work moving forward as we recover from this global pandemic, and as we address some of the more egregious economic inequities that have been embedded in our system for forever. Some of the big North Stars that are related to business services that I will say should be pretty obvious in the RFP are addressing quality jobs, as well as prioritizing and targeting businesses that have embedded career pathways.
I can talk about the MOU. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Workforce Development Council and the WorkSource system in Seattle-King County have an MOU that everyone signs about how we'll behave together. And so basically it says we will communicate with each other. We will work to do our best services for job seekers and employers, our two customers, and it kind of boilerplate language everyone signs, and it's for 3 years, a 3-year period. We probably need to do some rewriting of it since COVID, but basically you have to, as a partner, agree to the MOU.
So coordinated business services. This is actually the federal language from WIOA that outlines the required services that any WIOA funded business services team must do. Rapid response for WIOA's Title I and the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program. So rapid response is one of the mandated services that the business services team must provide to any business that asks for it. And this document outlines what those services look like or can look like.
And I'll do the next one.
About ISD, thank you.
Integrated service delivery is something that our state has approved. Employment Security Department is our funder, as Liesl noted earlier, through the federal jobs program, federal DOL. And integrated service delivery is our work together as partners. We wear the WorkSource logo and we work for many different agencies, but we don't need customers to understand who makes our paycheck. Basically, an integrated service delivery is that every customer is everyone's customer. This has been a bit of a challenge in COVID times. We're still open, and we've been open the whole time through virtual services. But integration is basically just about the idea that as an employment security staff, as a service provider staff, a DVR is a partner, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation is a partner. It's not necessarily that you only serve one customer that's your customer. It's you help a customer that comes through the resource room and needs assistance, just like you'd help anybody else. So that's what integrated service delivery is about. And the co-enrollment piece is basically doesn't really apply to business services, but it co-enrolls people into some programs that they could be eligible for in the near future when they first register.
The federal training and employment notice, advancing a one workforce, right? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let me see all that. Advancing a one workforce vision and strategy is a notice from the federal government around providing integrated services that include not just services to job seekers, but also must include services to businesses at all American job centers, of which, again, in Washington State, it's called WorkSource.
Mm-hmm. These notices are training and employment notices. They go by TEN from the federal government. And then the state Employment Security Department has policies that mirror some of the Department of Labor policies, and so do our local policies. I'll take the next one. The system of WorkSource basically does certification of its sites. In WorkSource Seattle-King County, we have 7 brick and mortar sites run by 4 different agencies. And we have 38 sites we call connection sites, which are web-based connections with community organizations on the library systems, all kinds of different, all the colleges, all the community colleges, et cetera. So we've been developing connection sites and growing our network that way. But the actual brick and mortar sites and the connection sites do go through a certification process. They have to have a certain level of staffing, a certain number of partners that are mandatory in WIOA in the Act. And so this was the year we were supposed to be going through certification, but since we're not open for in-person services, a big part of this certification process is about the physical layout of the actual space, et cetera. So the certification has been put on hold for some time. I'll take the next one too. I think this is about the calculator. So progress toward economic self-sufficiency. The WDC of Seattle-King County has been a leader in what we call the self-sufficiency calculator. And we've been working with the UW for quite some number of years, tried to set a standard for family size and self-sufficiency. And you can go look at the calculator. This is probably a link to the calculator to see it. You could put in your own information for your own family and just see what a wage would look like for the wage earners in the family, and what the family would need to be able to be self-sufficient with no work supports. And we are requiring our service providers, not business services, but other providers, to assess people's income when they start a program and enroll into a program. And then when they end the program, because we're trying to show the progress that people are making toward the self-sufficiency level of income. And we do pretty well with that. It's about 65%. At 100%, 65% reach self-sufficiency, and almost everybody makes some progress toward that self-sufficient wage. And this is a Liesl thing.
So the next generation sector partnership model, we ask that all bidders review this model because it is central to how our region is investing in industry engagement, of which the business services team is a very large support partner in those efforts. And then the healthcare industry leadership table is the current, ongoing, very successful next generation sector partnership that we have here in the Puget Sound region around the healthcare industry. And so, you know, we have our, we're asking our business services team members to support our next generation sector partnerships, our ILTs. And so understanding the model as well as how the current model HILT has kind of gone on its journey since May of 2018. We ask that you have a kind of thorough understanding of both of those.
And the WDC also has an industry engagement committee, which is in kind of in the middle of talking about more industry leadership tables, which business services staff would be required to be support partners in as well. So that part of this work would be growing in the next 3 or 4 years.
Again, if you have any further questions, please direct those to operations@ckingwdc.org.
Thank you to everyone for attending.
Thank you.